CRN, Digital Talk Radio. Chuck Wilder here with Paul Stern up there near the Hollywood Hills at the network. And we're live across America on this radio station or cable system and around the world at crntalk.com, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Apple, Blueberry, Blackberry. Any way you want to find us, you're apt to do it. Hey, tomorrow's guest, Michael Daugherty, government whistleblower. That's right. And he wrote the book, The Devil Inside the Beltway, looking at an article he just wrote entitled, Is Google a Very Real Threat to America's Freedom? Interesting. Ash Shao, commentary writer for the Washington Examiner, looking at the Rolling Stone story, damaged serious efforts, that is, to combat sexual assault. Jessica Vaughn, Director of Policy Studies for the Center of Immigration Studies, her latest new data showing immigration gang arrest. Right now, I want to go to William J. Federer, former U.S. congressional candidate, nationally known speaker, best author, president of Amerisearch Incorporated. That's a publishing company dedicated to researching America's noble heritage. Author of America's God and Country, Encyclopedia of Quotations, and his American Minute radio feature. He is also author of the updated What Every American Needs to Know About the Quran, A History of Islam and the United States. Also, Chains to Change. Does history give us a clue as to where all of this is headed? Bill, welcome back to the show, sir. How are you?
Chuck, great to be with you.
Boy, I tell you, you got so many interesting articles on this thing, and over the weekend, I was looking at it, and I said, boy, I just don't know where to start. I mean, you would look at Lincoln and his cabinet. It was so interesting about the Civil War and the reason that Lincoln did certain things. I never knew that. I said, boy, was I living in a closet somewhere? And we're going to get into all of that. But I think one of the most interesting things is this fact here that you came out with, and you said there are more slaves today than at any time in human history. And this was Benjamin Skinner, a fellow at Carr Center, came out and made that statement. Could that possibly be true? More slaves today than at any time?
Well, there are an estimated 27 million people worldwide who are held in forced labor, forced work, forced marriages, sex trafficking, generational indebtedness, prostitution. They go under different names, but it is, in fact, slavery. And it goes on in America. There is a large sex trafficking industry that goes on under the surface. And it happens in other countries. For example, in India, they have generational indebtedness where if your great-grandfather got in debt, that debt is passed on to the grandkids and great-grandkids and all the way down, and with the interest rates, that it never gets paid off. And so the kids are born into this slavery. Wow. Thailand, it is one of the places where they have a sex trafficking industry with children. Very sad, but people from around the world will go there on their holidays and participate in that evil. But it is something that largely goes unreported. Matter of fact, it is beginning to take notice because of the websites being able to publish this. But even Time Magazine, January 18th, 2010, said, despite more than a dozen international conventions banning slavery in the past 150 years, there are more slaves today than at any point in human history. And now,
almost
of
tells
course,
me, Bill, that the United Nations is a bunch of hooey. You know what I'm saying?
Well, one of the reasons, with its good intentions, it excluded God. Now, that's more than just a religious exclusion. It is where the rights come from. Our Declaration has a very profound statement that says all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Eleanor Roosevelt, for all of her efforts came up with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And all the countries got together and they spent all this time writing it. It's just a general consensus of what the people think the rights should be. There's no claim that these rights are given by a creator. And so as a consequence, people say, well, if this is the general consensus of what we all agree on, what if we agree on different things? And so you have 57 Muslim countries. They are some of the richest countries in the world. They have formed their own bloc inside of the UN. It's called the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And they decide that they want to practice their Sharia law. And because they have lots of money and lots of clout, they have, in a sense, co-opted the United Nations to push an agenda that allows them to have Sharia law. And Sharia law says women are not equal to men. You can join Islam, but if you leave, you get killed. It's the death penalty. Sharia law says to cut off the hands of thieves and, cut off arms and legs, and this corporal punishment. And they're saying that we have the right to do this because this is our generally agreed upon consensus that we like Sharia law. And they're stuck in this quandary because the United Nations does not acknowledge a creator. Now, I have to point out, it's a Judeo-Christian creator. In Hinduism, there's 300 million different gods. You don't have any guaranteed rights from these different gods. In atheistic countries, there is no God. And the Islamic countries, their Islamic God says it's okay to rape the infidel woman. It's okay to beat your wife. So our declaration, when it says all men are endowed by the Creator, it is assuming it is a creator from the book of Genesis, the Bible, the God of the Bible. And so without that, then you don't have any other rights other than what this general consensus says. And that was the problem with Hitler and the Nazis. When the Nuremberg trials, the soldiers were put on trial for killing the Jews, and they said, look, this was the general consensus in our country of what was agreed upon rights, and we were just following the laws of our country, and the Jews didn't have any rights. And so they said, well, there's got to be a source for rights higher than your country, and it was just generally agreed upon, and now we're realizing that that really carries no weight at all.
So there will be no end of slavery ever brought up by the Muslims. Now, in 1993, you say the U.S. State Department, I don't have the figure here. For some reason, when I copy some of this stuff, it goes sideways or whatever. And I'm talking about southern Sudanese that were captured and taken into slavery by North African Arabs. How many was that? Do you have that figure?
Well, it's in the millions, and it is very sad. The North African Arabs in Sudan say that the southern Sudanese, who are African and who are largely Christian, that they have no rights. And they, even as we speak, they're using their military to fly planes to shoot missiles at hospitals to kill southern Sudanese African Christians. Even George Clooney went over there and did a documentary special to highlight this injustice. And, of course, the world just lets it go on, like we are letting the Boko Haram, the Muslim groups, capture the girls in Nigeria and take them off. And all our president's wife does is send out a tweet. And, of course, they just laugh at us. It was in 1993, the U.S. State Department estimated 90,000 southern Sudanese were taken captive. Now, that's 1993, and so today it's way larger than that. UNICEF estimated 200,000 children a year are sold from West Africa and Central Africa to the surrounding countries to be domestic slaves, agricultural slaves, or sex slaves.
Bill, when the president did his whole thing about 5 or 6 months ago when he brought over all of the representatives from Africa, none of this slavery was ever brought up. You know, it was all about how can we help you commercially, and help build your country up. But they don't want to talk about slavery that's going on, do they?
Well, and the dilemma is that the Muslim countries cannot get rid of slavery because Muhammad himself owned slaves. And for them to condemn slavery, they would have to condemn Muhammad, because Muhammad himself owned slaves. So there has never been an abolitionist movement in Muslim countries. There's never been a war waged in Muslim countries to free the slaves. There's never been an Abraham Lincoln or a William Wilberforce or a Muslim leader who has championed that. And again, it's because Muhammad himself owned slaves. And
now, a little bit later on, probably after the we'll get into the history in the United States. Very interesting stuff. But I wanted to kind of go worldwide. Let's talk about India. India's having a little bit of problem there, too. They're actually locking up little children, I think, right?
Right. Well, the International Labor Rights and Education Fund records hundreds of thousands of kidnapped children in India who are locked in rooms, forced to weave carpets.
Wow.
And this fund raises money to try to buy them out of slavery. And then the Human Rights Commission in Pakistan has worked to try to free the thousands held in the southern Singh province, which is spelled S-I-N-G-H. And these are captured children and people who are held in leg irons for unpaid debts and forced to harvest cane. And so,
Bill, I'll bring up real quick, going back to India, I think I read a week or so ago that right now we import visas and outsource. Our number one outsource country is India. You know, taking over all the telephone jobs and all these other things, you know, and so many people in India holding American jobs, all right, jobs that American citizens could be doing. And here, hundreds of thousands of kidnapped children. Doesn't it seem like there's something wrong with this picture?
Well, you're right, and every now and then it does make the news that there's some company that has clothes or tennis shoes, and they're being manufactured with slave labor in these third world countries and sold for a profit over here. But the worst is the prostitution. And again, the young girls and boys that are sold into prostitution in Thailand and in Mauritania. My daughter went on a mission trip to Thailand and would see these young girls walking down the beach, in swimming suits, holding hands with these 40, 50-year-old pot-bellied European men, and she says, "Dad, it's so gross." And but these girls are trapped in that, and of course the ministry that she was over there would invite these girls to come to their Bible studies, and they would actually have girls that would become Christian, and they would sing Amazing Grace in their Thai language, and they would cry and they'd say, "I know Jesus 3 months. How long you know Jesus?" And she said, "Dad, well, over there when people, become Christian, their lives totally change. And here these girls would have to give up making hundreds of dollars a day as a prostitute, and then, sending it home to their families who live a...
Hold it right there, and I want you to continue that story from Thailand. When we return, right after this, with William J. Federer. He's the author of America's God and Country, Encyclopedia of Quotations. We are discussing a lot of articles he's got, but mostly it's about slavery and those who struggled to end it. Be right back.
CRN travelers, relax at the beautiful Fountain Grove Inn and Conference Center in Santa Rosa, California. Come to quality and come to luxury. Experience the newly renovated guest rooms. They're generously sized and they're decorated in the Tuscan tradition. They have great, incredible pillow-top mattresses, luxurious linens, and down-filled comforters. The Fountain Grove Inn also offers complimentary Wi-Fi and internet access. There's warm cookies and coffee every evening in the hotel lobby, And you can visit the newly remodeled Equus Restaurant and Equus Lounge with its new wine bar. It's the ideal place to relax and enjoy a glass of wine and watch our What's Cooking on Wine show on CRN with host Larry Van Alst on Wednesdays. It's the Fountain Grove Inn, Hotel, and Conference Center located in the heart of Sonoma wine country. It's easily located in Santa Rosa off the 101 Fountain Grove Parkway exit. Call 707-578-6101. That's 707-578-6101 or visit fountaingrovinn.com.
When you don't use an agency that provides home care workers and you hire help directly, there's a lot of paperwork involved. AARP caregiving expert Amy Goyer.
You need to factor in the fact that you will pay employer taxes. There are federal guidelines that determine when home care workers are considered to be household employees. It comes back around to how many hours they're working and who controls the work.
As the employer, you must get an EIN number from the IRS, and the employee must pay taxes. Know both your state and federal tax requirements and how much you must withhold for each. You must also pay employer taxes. If this seems overwhelming, an accountant can figure this out, or you can hire a payroll service to do it. But even with these added costs, you can sometimes save a lot of money not going through a caregiving agency. Tomorrow, paying yourself for the caregiving duties you do. That's Primetime Focus, brought to you by AARP. I'm Aileen Ellis.
We are perfectionists. We do it right and don't stop until the job is done. We build commercial zero-turn mowers with maneuverability, power, and comfort. Who are we? We are Kubota. Now, during our More Power to You sales event, you can get long-term financing as low as 0% APR on new commercial-grade Z700 series mowers. For more information or to find a participating dealer, visit Kubota.com.
Hi, this is Bill Martinez. Join us every Monday through Friday from 9 to noon Eastern when we're covering the issues that matter most to you. From Obamacare, the latest from Russia, the Middle East, Israel, immigration, and more. We're talking with the policy and political experts so you can be better informed. It's Bill Martinez Live, brought to you in part by my friends at Good News Tax Relief. Let them help you get your peace of mind back by dealing with the IRS for you. Proven experience, proven results. Call 800-255-7500.
Everybody's talking at me.
My guest, William Federer. Website is Amerisearch.net, Amerisearch.net, AMERI search.net. Also AmericanMinute.com, discussing slavery and talking about the prostitution that was going on and still is in Thailand.
Well, and another place is North Korea, and what happens there. The Geneva Summit for Human Rights and Democracy heard accounts of thousands held in North Korean slave labor camps. And these are people that most likely are Christian that disagree with the government. They just want to be Christians, and it's illegal to be such over there. And they are put in these camps. Horrible stories of how they're physically abused and mutilated. And so we see that slavery exists in the world today. Unfortunately, its origins go back to the first human records. We're talking
and just
ancient
before
Egypt. Go ahead.
Do they also have a lot of... I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
Do they also have a lot of retaliation from the authorities? Aren't the authorities sort of looking the other way and saying, yeah, you know, we're getting a kickback on this stuff too, the prostitution?
Yes, and it brings lots of money into these different countries. And with boys and with girls, I was in one of the Eastern European countries, and they talked about how when the truckers would come across the border, there would be prostitutes lined up for miles alongside of the road for the truckers, you know, these different Europe. And then, of course, in Turkey and places like that where they would sell their sons and their daughters into prostitution for the family to get money. So the value of human life comes down to it's a software issue. It's what's taught to people. And we find out that the Judeo-Christian concepts have the strongest resistance to slavery. The idea that everyone's made in the image of God, that whatever you've done to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me, is what Jesus said.
Now, you go back in this article, you mentioned St. Patrick and the 5th century. Let's get into the history of this.
Right, and so Europe was the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire did have slavery. Matter of fact, the word slave comes from the word Slav. Yugoslav, Czechoslovakia, Slovenia, Slovakia. So Slav was the name of a people group, and it meant glorious one. But the Romans captured so many of them and brought them into Rome and had them be permanent servants that the word Slav got the connotation of a permanent servant. And, of course, the pronunciation changed to slave. And so as the Roman Empire became Christianized, slavery began to drop off until finally it was virtually non-existent in the Christian areas of Europe. They didn't have a war. They didn't have a abolitionist movement, but it was just as it was Christianized, the Christians gave up this practice of slavery. And but we focus on Britain, and when China built the Great Wall of China, the Huns could no longer attack into China. They attacked west. It started a domino effect of tribes across Central Asia that spilled over the Roman borders. Rome had to pull its legions back from the frontiers to protect the borders. Britain, which was a Roman colony, suddenly didn't have any police, no military. It was they were all gone, and to protect the Roman borders in Europe. And so this Roman colony was left unprotected, and marauding bands of, criminals type would kidnap and sell people into slavery. And this is when Patrick was kidnapped and sold as a slave into Druid Ireland. And was there for 6 years, finally remembered his parents' Christian faith. He converted, he escaped, and then when he was around 40 years old, he went back to Ireland as a missionary, ended up baptizing 120,000 people, used the three-leaf clover to teach the Trinity, started 300 churches, and in effect ended the slavery there in Ireland. But there was a British pagan king, one of these guys that came in, because Britain, which had been a Roman colony, was invaded by the Anglos, and then invaded by the Saxons, and then invaded by the Vikings.
Yep. Sorry, Bill, I don't know where all of that noise is coming from. I apologize. Must be something from the network. Having a weird day today. Look, it's perfect timing, though, because we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to turn to the U.S. of A., 1688. Very interesting. This is on record for the first opposition of slavery from a group. All right. William J. Federer, the website, Amerisearch.net. We'll be right back.
We are perfectionists. We do it right and don't stop until the job is done. We build commercial zero-turn mowers with maneuverability, power, and comfort. Who are we? We're Kubota. Now, during our More Power to You sales event, you can get long-term financing as low as 0% APR on new commercial-grade Z700 series mowers. For more information or to find a participating dealer, visit Kubota.com.
I'm Chris Wald. Since taking Andro 400, I have dropped 45 pounds. I'm sleeping better. My knee pain went away. I've had some lower back issues, and I've noticed that went away. The radio ad, does it attack belly fat? Well, let me tell you, it did. I've lost 6 inches.
So guys, if you'd like to get similar results, try Andro 400, the safe, inexpensive way to boost your testosterone. Go to andro400.com or call 866-546-1955. 866-546-1955.
The showroom at South Point presents illusionist Rick Thomas. Mind-gripping effects that will have you mesmerized. April 10th through the 12th. Is it magic? Illusion. Is it real? Tickets are vanishing fast. Conjure yours now by the magic of going online at southpointcasino.com or charge by phone 702-797-8055. Rick Thomas at the South Point.
I want to start out with some of my songs that go back to my very first recording. Don't it make my brown eyes...
The Showroom at South Point presents Crystal Gale, April 24th through the 26th. Tickets available now. In person at the South Point box office, online at southpointcasino.com, or charge by phone 702-797-8055. Don't miss Crystal Gale at the South Point.
Let me take just a moment or two, if I may, and talk about a great place to eat. That's right, for you folks anywhere in the eastern San Fernando Valley, drop into Bob's Big Boys. That's right, in Sun Valley at 8274 Sunland Boulevard. Now, everybody remembers the name Bob's. They're getting bigger and bigger every day. And little old Bob carrying the hamburger in his checkered overalls is the same Bob that you remember from back through the years. And, of course, if you want to go in for a great lunch, remember their classic burger, the original double-deck hamburger combination. Delicious 100% pure ground beef in 2 patties with American cheese, lettuce, and our famous Big Boy's special sauce. The name is Bob, and I think when you go in, you'll say, by golly, I'm sure glad that I found this restaurant because it's good for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. They've got all kinds of things, and all you have to do is remember. Bob's Big Boy in Sun Valley at 8274 Sunland Boulevard. It's a great place to eat.
Have you ever considered adding a home security system but thought it would be too expensive? Here's the good news. There's never been a more affordable time to help protect your home, valuables, and your loved ones. You can now get a $100 Visa card from Protect Your Home, your authorized ADT dealer, with the installation of a new ADT monitored system. Here's even better news. Your new system, worth $850, is free. You pay just a $99 installation charge and purchase monthly monitoring for less than $2 a day. Call Protect Your Home today at 1-866-669-8954. That's 1-866-669-8954. Get the peace of mind that comes with owning an ADT monitored system, plus a $100 Visa card from Protect Your Home. Call now, 1-866-669-8954. That's 1-866-669-8954. 36-month monitoring contract required. General terms and conditions apply. Visit protectyourhome.com/terms.
Everybody's talking at me.
CRN Digital Talk, Chuck Wilder here, with William J. Federer, former U.S. congressional candidate. He is the author of America's God and Country Encyclopedia of Quotations. Also, let me see here. It was Chain to Chains, Change to Change. Yes, does history give us a clue as to where all of this is headed? We're talking about slavery. Now, so much to cover here. The Quakers, you say in your article, in the 17th century, consistently lobbied to end slavery. So they were about the first group, right?
Right. Well, there were the Catholic orders in Europe during the Middle Ages. So the Muslims captured over 1 million Europeans from fishing boats, from coasts, from the coast of Spain, Italy, France. One of the pilgrim ships was captured by the Muslims, taken to Morocco, sold into slavery. The pilgrims had saved up 800 pounds of beaver skins and sent it back to Europe for trade, and the Muslims captured it. The Muslims captured an entire Irish village, the stolen village of Baltimore, Ireland, took the whole town to Morocco, sold them into Muslim slavery, and then they captured 400 from Reykjavik, Iceland around 1640, took them to Morocco, sold them into slavery. And so these Catholic orders were there. And then when the Spaniards, Columbus discovered the New World, claimed it all for Spain, the Spaniards enslaved the Native Americans for a century. And there was a Catholic Spanish priest named Bartolomé de las Casas, and he spends his whole life trying to get the King of Spain to outlaw the enslavement of the Native Americans. He finally is successful, and the greedy guys say, well, where can we get more slaves if we can't enslave the Native Americans? And someone said, Africa. And so that's when the Portuguese and Spanish began to buy the slaves from the Muslim slave markets and brought them to the New World. So every slave brought to America was purchased at a Muslim slave market. Now, there's two threads I trace through history, just to give a little background. There are always those motivated by the gospel, and there's always those motivated by greed. Those motivated by the gospel are the ones that, like Bartolome de las Casas, who tries to end slavery. They're the ones that have the missionaries that dig wells in the villages and have the orphanages and the medical clinics and the Gladys Aylward that stopped the feet binding of the little girls in China, and William Carey that stopped the practice of sati in India, where a widow was expected to throw herself on the funeral pyre of her husband and be burnt up. And so you always have people motivated by the gospel, but you always have people motivated by greed. And they're the ones that take land from the Indians, sell people into slavery, and vote for candidates they think will help their pocketbook, even though that candidate stands for immorality. So those two threads exist today. So we classify the Spaniards, right? You have the good ones and the bad ones. Unfortunately, there were a lot of the bad ones that were motivated by greed, and they were the ones that purchased the slaves from the Muslim slave markets. But in North America, it was the Quakers. The first slaves to North America was in Virginia. A Dutch ship had purchased some slaves and got blown off course and landed in America, and they were starving and they didn't have any money, and they had some slaves, and they said, hey, we'll trade some slaves for food. And so that was the beginning of slavery. Now, there was what's called indentured servants, and that's where if you didn't have money to come to the New World and you were poor, you would sell yourself into slavery for 7 years to get a boat ride. And you would work for 7 years, and then you would get your freedom. Unfortunately, that gave a taste for slavery that stayed in the mouths of many of the plantation owners and later turned into the permanent slavery. But the Quakers were always against slavery. And
I want to get to some of these Congress people, too, here in just a moment, but there is a quote you have here, the 18th, 19th century, William Wilberforce, is that his name? Wilberforce?
Wilberforce.
He said, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again that you did not know. He put it right on the line, didn't he? Now, there's the founding father, Richard Bassett, Methodist. He freed all his slaves. John Jay helped draft New York's first Constitution. Jay, he was promoting freeing the slaves in 1785. And I'm looking at some of these others, but John Jay is really mentioned a lot in this article you wrote. Maybe more so than any other person other than Abraham Lincoln.
Right. Well, Ben Franklin was the first president of the first anti-slavery society. So there were the Quakers that were always against slavery, and they'd always be bringing it up. But this was in a society dedicated to getting rid of slavery, and Ben Franklin was the head of it. But there were people like John Jay, and he was appointed by George Washington to be the first Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Jay helped found the New York State Society for Promoting Manumission of Slaves. That's the word for freeing the slaves. And he would actually file lawsuits on behalf of the slaves. And John Jay wrote to Benjamin Rush, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He said, I wish to see all discriminations everywhere abolished, and that the time may soon come when all our inhabitants of every color and denomination shall be free and equal partakers of our political liberty. And John Jay helped found the New York African Free School in 1787. He supported it financially. And then he even wrote, he says, I purchased slaves and manumit them. So on his own, with his own money, he would buy slaves and free them. He became the governor of New York, and he signed an act for the gradual abolition of slavery in 1799. And he prohibited the exportation of slaves, making a path for children of slaves to attain freedom. And then he also became the president of the American Bible Society. So the people fueling the anti-slavery movement were also people that were involved with the American Bible Society. So that was a spiritual motivation.
Now, we have, John Jay, right, who we're talking about. Then we got William Jay, and he was John Jay's son. Is that right?
Right, and he lived in the early 1800s. He founded the New York City Anti-Slavery Society, and he drafted the Constitution for the American Anti-Slavery Society. He was a judge in New York's Westchester County, and he was so much against slavery that he actually got removed from being a judge. Could you imagine that? And then he was one of the founders of the American Bible Society.
And John Jay II, is that also part of their heritage?
Right. So you have John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and then his son William Jay, and then his son John Jay II.
Boy.
And he was the manager of the New York Young Men's Anti-Slavery Society, and he was one of the founders of the Free Soil Party. And so that was an anti-slavery political party. And then he ended up was one of the founders of the Republican Party. So the Republican Party was founded on ideological basis. Matter of fact, the original platform in 1856 said the Republican Party was founded to eliminate the twin relics of barbarism, slavery, and polygamy. Polygamy was in Utah, where the group said, hey, it's our religion, we can have lots of wives. And we said, no, you can't change the definition of marriage for your sexual immorality. And so the Republican Party was founded to maintain the definition of marriage as one man and one woman.
Wow.
Back then it was the number, today it's the sex, but the party's platform says that it stands for the definition of marriage as one man and one woman. It's what's called the natural marriage. It's the reproductive union.
Remember I was talking about a book a while ago, Chain to Chains, Change to Chains?
Yes.
Does history give us a clue where we're headed? They really believed marriage was between a man and a woman back. Wow, isn't that amazing? And because so little time, and we were almost out of time, Cassius Clay. Now people say, wait a minute, how in the world do we get to Cassius Clay? Well, there's a name in the middle there, Marcellus, right? Cassius Marcellus Clay, and he helped found the Republican Party also, right?
Right. I mean, you had people like John Quincy Adams, Samuel P. Chase, and he was a Supreme Court justice. But Cassius Marcellus Clay, now we may be familiar with that name because Cassius Clay was a boxer before he became a Muslim and changed his name. But the original Cassius Clay was one who helped found the Republican Party. He served 3 terms in Kentucky as a representative, and he was so anti-slavery that he ended up losing his seat. And the Democrats would catch him and beat him up. That's right. The Democrats were pro-slavery, and he was a Republican, and he was against slavery. And so
they
he
shot
got
him
shot
in the chest. Yeah. And let me just tell the listener real quick here that you got some stuff in here where there's some pretty nasty Democrats. Here they shot Cassius Clay, and a little bit later on, I don't have it in front of me just yet, but the guy that got beat with a cane died later because he was talking about, I guess he was on the Congress floor and talking about freeing the slaves, and a Democrat beat him to death.
Right, it was Charles Sumner, and he said that slavery was the mistress of the South, this immoral relationship, and the South's pride was hurt, and so there was a Southern congressman that beat him with his cane, gutta percha cane, and another Southern Democrat stood guard with a gun, allowing the guy to beat him because people were trying to come to his rescue. And so these were very hot, and people forget that it was the Republican Party that pushed through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to outlaw slavery, grant rights to freed slaves, and to make sure that the slaves voted. Democrats in the Deep South started the KKK and the vigilante groups and the blue-black codes and the Jim Crow laws. And even in the 1960s, the Democrats filibustered for 71 days to make sure that no civil rights legislation would pass. And
what year was that?
That was 1965. And Lyndon Johnson noticed that with the advent of television and the Democrats, George Wallace saying we're not going to have integration, Senator Byrd, who would have been a Democrat member of the KKK, and he was filibustering the civil rights, and then the sickened dogs on the blacks in the South and fire hosing them down on the streets, and LBJ noticed this doesn't look good for Democrats. And so he's the one who switched it from the bullet to the bribe, that if we cannot keep them from voting, let's get as many of them out of work and on welfare, and then they'll be strongly motivated to vote for the party that gives them the entitlements. And so it's called the Great Society Welfare State. And LBJ also changed the immigration quotas to bring in more immigrants so they would sign up for these entitlements, and then they would be tempted to vote to continue those entitlements, and it was a way to grow their party base.
Now, there was a time, listener, Lincoln, the president, said, "There's a time for the enunciation of the emancipation policy, and it can no longer be delayed." And the reason was because he promised God. Right, Bill? Tell them that story.
Well, it was when the beginning of the war, the South was winning, and they had Robert E. Lee, who was one of the most brilliant general we may have ever had, Stonewall Jackson, another brilliant general. The South was winning, and when they were going into Maryland is when Lincoln said that if they could be stopped, then he would crown the event with declaring freedom to the slaves. And then you had the infamous order, what is it, 171, but Robert E. Lee had an order, and he had it delivered to his generals. And some messenger had the order wrapped around 3 cigars, and as they were crossing Maryland, the guy must have misplaced them. And so the Union troops are coming along, and they see it sitting there. They say, "Hey, what's this? Some cigars and a piece of paper out of it." They unroll it, and it is Robert E. Lee's entire plan of splitting his forces, but trying to make it appear that he didn't split the force, and so the Unions would. And so the McClellan, who was the Union general, knew exactly what Robert E. Lee was doing, and he had this battle where if he had any sense, he would have won it, but he didn't. But it at least forced the Confederates to retreat from Maryland, and it was after that Lincoln decided to declare freedom to the slaves.
Wow. You know, there's the movie that came out, you know, about the guy that was in the Olympics in Germany, and then he got shot down in the airplane, and he was out on a raft, you know, and all that, and he made, you know, the promise to God that if he was saved, you know, he was going to follow his cause and the whole thing, and lived up to that, too. I think it's called Unforgiven, or I believe that was the name of the movie. Interesting, Lincoln, you say the first Republican president, he addressed the Indiana Regiment, March 17th, 1865, and here's what he said. "Whenever I hear anyone arguing for slavery, I feel a strong impulse to see it tried on him personally." Boy, that's something to think about, isn't it?
Right, and the country was divided into 5 categories, and it was Special Order 191. I just wanted to tell you in case somebody wants to look it up. By the way, all this information is on my website, AmericanMinute.com, and it was the Battle of Sharpsburg that the tide turned there. But the country was divided in 5 categories. The radical Republican North said slavery's wrong, end it now. The moderate Republican North said slavery's wrong, but let's transition out of it. You don't want to take a bunch of people that can't even read and put them out on the street. Let's, give them, teach them how to make a living before you give them the third category was this middle that said, we don't care about social issues like slavery. We just care about money. And then you had the moderate Democrat South that said slavery's wrong, but we got to live with it. It's been here for centuries. Just treat your slaves nice. Have it be rare and few. Then you had the extreme Democrat South that said slavery's good. Let's expand it to the new territories that came into the Union with the Louisiana Purchase and the Mexican secession. And let's force the people in the North to support slavery with the Fugitive Slave Law.
Okay, we're going to wrap things up in just a moment. William J. Federer, it's Amerisearch.net, Amerisearch.net, and AmericanMinute.com, AmericanMinute.com. Be right back.
You
you experiencing pain? Back pain, shoulder, elbow, or hand pain? Pain from a sports injury? If so, schedule a visit with Dr. Michael Sheps, the leading expert in laser therapy for pain management. Call 310-873-4422 or go to drsheps.com. Experience Epic T, the breakthrough laser therapy system that Dr. Sheps developed to make you pain-free in less time. Laser therapy is a non-invasive, safe, and effective in-office procedure that penetrates deep into your skin without damaging the tissue. It perfectly targets areas of pain to promote fast, natural healing. Relax your muscles, ease muscle spasms, joint stiffness, and arthritis pain while increasing blood circulation. For over 25 years, Dr. Sheps has helped Olympic athletes and sports enthusiasts alike get back in the game. Schedule your visit with Dr. Sheps at his Brentwood office in California. Call 310-873-4422 or visit drsheps.com. That's DRSHEPS.com. 310-873-4422.
You order a glass of your favorite Cabernet, fresh asparagus, hollandaise on the side, a filet, medium rare. You unfurl your napkin with a flair, close your eyes, and prepare to listen. Ah, there it is. The sweet music you long to hear. The sizzle. The sizzle of a Ruth's Chris steak.
The most magnificent corn-fed prime beef, broiled to perfection at 1800 degrees. Some call it a sizzle. We call it an anthem.
As the waiter approaches, you think, is this one mine or that one?
Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Like Ruth always said, life's too short to eat anywhere else.
Make a reservation online at ruthschris.com or by calling 800-544-0808.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bob Marshall, Ph.D., host of Healthline. Join me live to get your questions answered and hear the latest breakthrough information for you and your family. This month, our Dragon Cleanse LX is on special. This has been studied for its extraordinary ability to bind a wide variety of toxins in the gastrointestinal tract, especially those that have dicarbonyl chemical structures or that bind to calcium-dependent binding sites. Research suggests it doesn't bind beneficial nutrients because of its unique structure. With the ever-increasing amount of toxins in our food and our environment, here's a practical, inexpensive way to mitigate the problem. Buy 2 bottles and get the third one free. Call 800-370-3447. That's 800-370-3447.
Listen to Helpline daily at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, 5:30 p.m. Eastern on CRN.
Everybody's talking at me.
My guest today, William J. Federer, and we've been talking about slavery. And, you know, you had about 3 or 4 articles that I just came across, well, long articles by Bill, that everything you write, you know, I am hooked on it absolutely 100%. And in one of your articles, you start talking about, you know, these people that want to eliminate the inferior races, which had a heck of a lot to do with slavery in the first place. And you talk about Darwin's theory and also all of the bad leaders throughout the world that followed this whole thing about eugenics, forced sterilization. And the amazing thing is a name that rings a bell with a lot of people, Margaret Sanger, Sanger. And you mentioned here that she went on to become famous for founding I guess would you call it a corporation, or what would the word be?
It's a nonprofit.
Nonprofit corporation.
It's a 501c3 nonprofit, the same way that churches are, only it doesn't get targeted by the government. But Margaret Sanger wrote in her autobiography of addressing a Ku Klux Klan rally in Silver Lake, New Jersey in 1938. And she wrote in her book, Pivot of Civilization in 1922, that she called for the elimination of human weeds that were overrunning the human garden, for the cessation of charity, because charity prolongs the lives of the unfit. for the segregation of morons and misfits and maladjusted, and for the sterilization of genetically inferior races. The one question hangs out there is, who is she to decide which race is genetically inferior? Mm-hmm. Who is she to decide who is the moron and who is unfit and misfit and maladjusted and needs to be eliminated? In other words, she's setting herself up as God. Now, her magazine, called the Birth Control Review, published an article in April of 1933, written by none other than Ernst Rudin. He was the Nazi Party founder of racial hygiene. Think racial hygiene. I know what hygiene is. Wow. That's washing your hands. Racial hygiene, that's washing the gene pool of inferior races. And so Margaret Sanger's thought supported Hitler's terrible Holocaust. Because,
so let me tell the listeners, because we've run out of time here, Bill, and here this lady, and I use that term loosely, I guess, 501c3, tax-free, she founded Planned Parenthood. Wow. It's shocking. Hey, Bill, all out of time. I'm telling you, I love everything you do, and as I always say, we got to do it again.
Well, thank you, Chuck. It's always an honor, and AmericanMinute.com is the website if anyone wants to sign up to receive the emails.
All right, AmericanMinute.com. AmericanMinute.com, Bill Federer. Thank you very much. Hey, tomorrow, let's see, Michael Daugherty, he's going to talk about article he wrote, Is Google a Very Real Threat to the American Freedom? As shall, we're going to look at, the rape that didn't happen. Yeah, and that story from the Rolling Stone magazine. And Jessica Vaughn will be here, Center for Immigration Studies. Her latest new data shows immigrant gang arrests. Thank you very much, Paul Stern, and thank you very much for listening in slower traffic. Please keep to the right.
Shows sound like this? What if you could hear your favorite shows in crystal clear, high-definition digital sound? Well, with CRN Digital Talk Radio's 6 channels of high-definition radio, you can now hear all of your favorite hosts like you've never heard them before in CRN HD. The difference is amazing. Catch your favorite political hosts like Dennis Prager, Tom Hartman, Barry Farber, and so many more. Entertainment and lifestyle programming like The Robert Conrad Show, The What's Cooking Show, and The What's Cooking on Wine Show, all in true CRN HD audio. Sports, business, travel, food, wine, politics, there is something for everyone, and it's all available in CRN High Definition Sound. Log on to www.crntalk for listings and information on all your